Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about what should I eat for diabetes. Okay, now I'm going to summarize exactly what we are going to talk about and you decide if you want to watch the entire video or not. I am Dr. Ahmet Ergin. I'm the founder of SugarMDs.com, and today you are going to get a very nice comprehensive review of diet and diabetes. Now we are going to talk about why diet is so important for diabetes, right? And we are going to give you some secrets about losing weight, how to lose weight with diabetes. We are going to talk about carbohydrate consistency, why it is so important to be consistent with carbohydrates. We are going to talk about carbohydrate counting. If you want to be precise with carbohydrate counting, especially if you're on multiple daily insulin injections, sometimes you have to be. And we will talk about how to count carbs precisely. We are going to talk about the serving size, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, how much you should eat, how do you calculate, and at the end of the video, we are going to talk about what should I eat. And with that, let's move on. Before we jump into the details, I want to explain to you what diabetes is. So if you're a new diabetic, most of the time people do not really understand why they became diabetic. Of course, genetic factors contribute to it, but the bottom line, especially for type 2 diabetics, right? So what happens is in time, our body becomes insulin resistant. So insulin is the hormone that allows your body to utilize the glucose, which is the primary energy source. So if your body is not able to get that glucose within the cells, then you're not going to feel good, your blood sugars will stay high. It's like you have $1 million locked in the bank, but you cannot pull your money. That's miserable, right? So most of the time, that's how patients with type 2 diabetes feel. They're tired and they keep gaining weight. Also, the reason for gaining weight, again, the problem with type 2 diabetes is not necessarily totally deficiency of insulin. They do not respond normal or even high levels of insulin. So most patients with type 2 diabetes actually have high insulin levels, not low, but they are unfortunately insulin resistant, and that is a problem. Especially every time they eat a carbohydrate containing food, their blood sugar tend to rise quickly because the insulin they have in their system is not working properly. Okay, let's talk about why diabetes is so important. Now, when we treat anybody with diabetes, we have something called ABC of diabetes, right? So A is your A1C. So if you do not know what A1C means, or you may have a little idea but not too much, you can definitely go to our website. We have an entire article about that at sugarmds.com/diabetes-education. Or just go to our website and go to diabetes education tab, and you will find our article about that. Now, A is the A1C, right? And then B is the blood pressure, and C is the cholesterol. So if you bring your A1C down but do not control your blood pressure or your cholesterol, then you will still have problems. As we discussed in our previous videos, 2/3 of patients with diabetes die from heart attacks or strokes, and these happen not just because of a high blood sugar, but they also have accompanying blood pressure and cholesterol problems. And every time your blood sugar is high, your blood pressure and cholesterol goal is even normal than a normal individual. So you may get hit with a blood pressure of 150/90 with diabetes way faster than somebody who does not have diabetes. Cholesterol is the same way. A normal cholesterol does not necessarily mean normal for a patient with diabetes. Their upper level is much lower when you have diabetes. So for example, the LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, should be less than 100 for every diabetic. Although the upper limit of normal can go up to 160 when you run a blood test, it may look okay for a regular person, but when you have diabetes, your goal of LDL is much lower, because in the environment of high glucose, the cholesterol makes a bigger impact to block your arteries and cause a heart attack. So as a result, when we talk about diet for diabetes, we are not only targeting your blood sugar, but we are also targeting your blood pressure and then your cholesterol as well. Of course, the key to improve your ABC for diabetes is losing weight. So how do we really lose weight then, right? So I'm going to give you a quick formula in terms of how much calories you should eat, right? So that's a common question that I get from my diabetic patients is, doctor, how much should I eat? Now, of course, counting calories and counting carbs is going to be extremely useful, but if you don't know what you're counting to, then that's not really going to help you, right? So you can count your calories, but if you're counting your 5,000 calories every day, of course, there's too much. Everybody would know that. But if you don't know your personal goal, then you will never achieve the weight loss goals, which will improve your A1C, your blood pressure, and your cholesterol. Now, how do you determine how much you should eat to lose weight? So first you determine what is your basal caloric needs, right? So or overall needs for any individual who is an active. Let's say talk about an active man. And men and women are different, age makes a difference sometimes, but let's talk about an active man. When I say active man, somebody who's always out at work, who works out, and those people generally require 15 calories per pound. So if you are 200-pound individual, that means that you're really, muscular and fit. You're gonna need around 15 times 200. That is around 3,000 calories. That is to maintain your weight. So if you're a sedentary man, if you're a woman, then you're probably, or an active woman, I would say, an active woman and sedentary man will need 13 calories per pound. Why am I putting the sedentary man and active woman just in the same bucket? Just because overall men burn more energy, more calories, they're more muscular, their bone mass is bigger. It's just a natural thing that the men burn more calories at the same weight. So as a result, 13 calories is if you're sedentary, and if you're a woman, active women, we are looking around 13 calories per pound to maintain your weight. Okay, now the next class would be sedentary women, or women who's after menopausal or after in their 40s. Generally, they need 10 calories per pound to maintain their weight. Again, these are ballpark figures. You may have a high metabolism or lower metabolism, but that's not going to be like 50 to 60% difference. If you are an individual with low metabolism, maybe you will have a 20% less needs than a person with a high metabolism. The common problem we see all the time is underestimation of calories. The studies show that when men and women estimate that they're eating 1,500 calories, they are typically eating around 2,000, but they underestimate down to 1,500, and that's because of the calculation problems, but also psychologically we tend to underestimate that. So if you're a pregnant woman, that would be around 15 to 17 calories per pound. So once you determine that how much you need to subtract 500 to 1,000 calories from that number in order to lose 1 to 2 pounds of weight a week. And that is the healthy amount of weight that you can lose. So let's say a sedentary man or let's say sedentary woman, age of 42, and she is 150 pounds. So her needs are 1,500 calories, right? So for her to lose 1 pound a week, she should go down to 1,000 calories. And when I say 1,000 calories, I mean it. That means that you have to calculate and be serious about, when you're counting your carbs. And now we're gonna move on to, how to count carbohydrates and consistency and so forth. And that's going to give you a very good idea. Okay, let's start with carbohydrate consistency and carbohydrate counting. The reason we emphasize carbohydrate consistency in a lot of individuals is if you know what is coming in, then your medications can be adjusted a lot easier, right? So if you are on, let's say, a glipizide or glyburide or glimepiride, when the doctors give you that medication, your insulin levels go up. So if you are not providing a steady amount of glucose to your system, then your blood sugars will drop. Now, doctors will give you a dose based on what they estimate your needs are. And let's say you're taking 5 milligrams of glipizide, right? And then you are eating 60 grams of carbohydrates per meal, and that is helping you out great. You're not gaining weight, you're not losing weight, that is perfect. If you are gaining weight, that means that we have to cut down on your calories, including your carbohydrates. So sometimes we tell them to eat 45 grams, but that comes with a reduction in the medication dose as well. So I always tell my patients, do not change your diet drastically without telling me, because the medications you're on is based on what your needs are at that time. If your needs change, your medications needs to change as well. And when you are not an expert in this area, when you try to manage yourself, when you doctor yourself, most of the time you will put yourself into trouble. So please do not do that. So carbohydrate consistency is also important for people, as we said, taking oral medications, but for patients who are taking insulin as well, if they're not willing to count carbs, as we discussed in our previous video where I talk about how to take insulin safely, we get into detail about this, but here I'm going to explain briefly that if you are consistent with your carbohydrates per meal, then your insulin is also consistent, then they are going to match and you should not have any problem, right? So we are going to talk about how to really estimate, because you cannot always look at the label. Sometimes you just have to estimate. And to estimate, we look at the hand. Our hand is the best guide. So a fist will equal to a 1 cup of carbohydrates. So if you just make a small fist, look at the food, look at your fist, you can estimate that that will be a 1 cup of that carbohydrate. Your palm could be equal to 3 ounces. Again, the thickness of your palm and the width of your palm would determine 3 ounces of food. Typically, we use ounces for the protein. Your thumb will be around 1 ounce of food. So these are just general guidelines to help you. Now with carbohydrate counting, if you want to get more education and training and want to be more into it and adjust your insulin as you go, because some people are not very regular, they're younger maybe, or their lifestyle is different, they eat outside and so forth, they may not be very consistent, they may not meal prep, or they may not be home, or whatever it may be. Those people need more flexibility. For those patients, especially if they're on insulin, for them to be able to adjust their insulin, let's say one day at lunch they are taking 5 units, next day they are taking 10 units, next day they are taking 8 units, they can do that as long as they know what is their insulin to carb ratio is, which means that if they know how much insulin they need for a certain amount of carbs, let's say they need 1 unit for 15 grams of carbs, then they know that if they're eating 45 grams of carbs, then they are getting 3 units of insulin, or if it is 1 unit for 10 grams of carbs, then if they are eating 45 grams, then they're gonna get 4 to 5 units of insulin. So we are going to jump into now how to actually estimate, how to do a plate method, where we actually, especially if you're a new diabetic, we explain to you, how to create a plate. Let's move on to that right now. Okay, this is how a plate should look like for pretty much any healthy individual, but also patients with diabetes. So basically, you should have 1/4 of your plate consisting of carbs, and these carbs should be right around the size of a small computer mouse. Does it look like a mouse? Yes, it does. Now your meats also should be 1/4 of your plate, and that should be at least 3 ounces. But depending on your body size and protein requirement, you can definitely eat more protein. The key here is to eat a lean protein. That could be a lean chicken or fish. Fatty fish is okay because it's healthy fat. But for example, red meat has a lot of unhealthy saturated fat, so we are avoiding that. However, non-fatty lean meats are okay, and if you are big and if you're working out trying to build muscle, it is okay to have more meat unless you have special contraindications. Now, the greens are okay to have as much as possible, at least half of your plate. 1 cup of uncooked vegetables is only 5 grams, so you don't have to count that. You only start counting these green vegetables if you are eating more than 3 cups, which is more than 15 grams of carbohydrates. Since we talked about the plate method, now I want to talk to you about the exchange system. Now, once you determine that you want to have 3 servings of carbs, for example, in the 1/4 of your plate, then you have the right to change now. But you have to really know how much of a rice is how much of a pasta. 1 serving of a pasta versus 1 serving of a potato versus 1 serving of a rice, 1 serving of a bread. So as long as you understand that exchange concept, then I can tell you that, for example, eat 3 servings of carbs. Then that 3 servings could be 3 different carbs if you're having 1 serving of each, or you can have 2 servings of 1 carb and 1 serving of another type of carb. Then that also will fit the bill. So we talked about dividing our plate. We talked about having 1/4 of the plate as carbs and 1/4 as protein, and 1/2 as raw vegetables, salads, etc. Now, how do we really estimate and how we really come up with a quick determination? So basically, if you're having pasta, 1/3 of a cup would be your 15 grams of carbs, which is 1 serving. For rice, that is also 1/3 of a cup. For potato, boiled potato, it is 1/2 of a cup. For bread, it's 1 slice. For corn, it is 1/2 of a cup. Again, the computer mouse can give you a size estimation in terms of your pasta, rice, potato, as far as 1 starch choice as 15 grams. And if you have the whole cup of pasta or whole cup of rice, that means that you are having 3 choice, which is total of 45 grams, since 1 choice is around 15 grams. Again, you can change. You don't have to eat the same things. You just have to be consistent in terms of total carbohydrates you eat in most cases. Or if you're counting carbs, you can take a variable amount of insulin depending on how much carbs you're eating. But if your doctor prescribed you a fixed amount of insulin per meal and prescribed you a certain amount of carbs, and if that is easier for you to do so rather than just keep counting carbs, then you can just estimate how much carbs you're eating, trying to stick to your ballpark figure around 45 to 60 or whatever is recommended for you. And you can exchange pasta to rice, rice to potato, bread to corn, whatever you feel like eating. All you have to know is how much of that food is equal to 1 exchange, which is 15 grams of carbs. When it comes to your protein, this is your size of a deck of a cards. That is basically telling you that's around 3 ounces. You can use your palm as we discussed, so that is another way of doing it. So palm of your hand is around 3 ounces, or you can just imagine a size of a deck of cards. So you can this could be chicken, this could be fish or beef, whatever it may be. For those people who actually want to precisely count carbs, it takes time and effort. Yes, sitting down with the educator helps, but the educator is not going to infuse the information to your brain and lock it in. So now I'm going to show you a table where you can actually see commonly eaten carbs, commonly chosen carbs by many of us. And once you practice it, once you understand what you're doing, what you're eating commonly, then it's going to, the repetition is the key. You know, once you understand how much of a rice you're eating and how much of a carb is that, or how much of a bread you're eating and how much of a carb is that, then you get the hang of it. Then you don't have to necessarily open a book or Google things, or or go to your app to necessarily find out. So once you know, that becomes an essential information for you. But I think that is the key, understanding. So let's go to commonly consumed carbohydrates, and we'll take it from there. So I am going to give you this table here to give you an idea. You can take a screenshot if you want to. Basically, this gives you a serving size or portion for common foods that we typically eat and like and enjoy. Right, so let's go over a few of this. The bread part, that where most of my patients love, for example, bagel. I test my patients, for example, how much one bagel contain, how much carbs one bagel contain, and they will most of the time not know. They will make estimations, but half the time, or more than half the time, they're wrong. And I think an educated patient is the best patient in my opinion. You do not have to be smart, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be tech savvy. All you have to know is your carbohydrates. An educated patient is the best patient in my eyes, because that will help you in the long run and in the short run to determine the best way of managing your diabetes, as this is the fundamental of diabetes care, where we most of the time fall short. Now, one bagel will be around 60 grams. Why? Because 1/4 of the bagel is around 15 grams, right? So that is our one serving is only 1/4 of a bagel. So if you're eating the whole bagel, you're eating 60 grams, right? So one serving is 15 grams, that the whole bagel will be 60 grams. If you look at bread, if it is a very reduced calorie, which is hard to find, but if you do, you can have 2 slices of those. More like a typical bread. If you look at the label, if the one serving is 15 grams, then it's 15 grams. If the one serving is 10 grams, it's 10 grams. You just need to know how much it is per slice. English muffin typically is 30 grams, the total thing. So half of that will be only one serving, which is your 15 grams. I don't want to call it one serving, because you do not just have to have just 15 grams, which is too little actually. So most of us will eat 45, 60, or 75 depending on your activity level. So as a result, as long as you know that half of an English muffin is your 15-gram exchange, then when you know that you're eating 2 English muffins, you're pretty much having 60 grams of total carbohydrates, or 4 servings of total carbohydrates. Your pancake is around 1. Your pita, 6 inches across, is if you're having half of that pita, that will be 15 grams. One plain roll would be 1 serving. A taco shell, 5 inches across, will be 2 serving, which is 30 grams. A tortilla is 1. A waffle is 1 if it is 4x4. Again, your cereals, your couscous, your granola, grits, pasta, you can find all these here for your information. I'm not going to go over it because that is really a long list here. Again, your fruits, a lot of people ask me, what should they eat? We have a separate video in terms of the fruits and how much fruits can be eaten and their serving size, etc. But if you look at here, for example, banana is a lot of people's favorite. A half a banana, around 4 ounces, will be your 15 grams. So if you're having a sizable banana, a full banana, then that will be around 30 grams of carbs. On the other hand, apple, 1 small apple will be 15 grams. Cherries, 12 of them will be 15 grams. 3 dates would be
15 grams and so forth. Again, the fruits have different glycemic indexes, so you need to pay attention to that as well. My favorite fruits are blueberries, blackberries, and let's see, orange is good in terms of the glycemic index being low. Strawberries are good, raspberries are good, watermelon is not that good, so you have to pay attention to that. Grapes are not that great, honeydew is not good. These ones, when I say not good, I mean it's going to spike your blood sugar due to glycemic index. But bottom line, this is a good list, and you can definitely Google anything. If you just Google and say, okay, you know, whatever that could be, just write it down, let's say an apple, and just put a space and carbs. Google will pull up from millions of websites exactly what you're looking for and will pop up onto your face. And that is as easy as that. For people with smartphones, that's great. For our less tech savvy patients or older patients, I recommend them to carry a carbohydrate book, which is not that difficult. It is a small book, and as I said before, if you continue to practice that, you will be a pro, you'll be an expert. You will not have to look at carbohydrate content in an apple every day if you're eating apple every day, right? So you will be able to remember that, and that will make your life easier in time.
Okay, finally we are going to talk about reading labels. So basically, if you are shopping and you have diabetes or not, I recommend everybody to know how to read labels. That is going to give you an idea what you're putting to your system. You could be an athlete, you could be a regular guy just like me, or you could be a patient with diabetes. Regardless of the fact that you should understand what you're eating in terms of total carbohydrates, fat, trans fat, saturated fat, protein. What you're eating makes your body and changes your health. So as a result, if you're diabetes, of course, you have to be more meticulous about this, but I'm going to go over right now how to read labels, and you will be a pro with practice.
Okay, we will talk about reading the nutrition labels. Very, very important. If you make it a habit of reading the nutrition labels, you are going to be a pro before you know it. So, I do that. I don't have diabetes, but I'm a diabetes expert, and I feel like I have to know what I'm doing before I teach anyone else. And I think anyone who is fit and who's into health and fitness always look at the nutrition facts regardless of if they have diabetes or not. So when you have diabetes, that's an extra incentive. That is not an obligation. That is not that's not a torture for you. That is something you should seriously be doing anyways. So let's look at how we read those nutrition facts. Now, number one, you have to look at how many servings in that container. So they put this calories big here, 230, but that is per serving. So you're looking for 8 times 230. So if you are looking to eat this whole package, good luck with that. You are going to get around 1,700 or more calories just from this packaged food, right? So basically, you look at the serving size next. That is 2/3 of a cup. So that means that everything that is listed here, that is total fat, your total carbohydrates and protein, are within the 2/3 of a cup of this food. That is one serving size. So if you are thinking to eat 1 cup, then you have to think accordingly. For example, if there is 37 grams of total carbohydrates in this food per serving, and that is 2/3 of a cup, you can make the math and you can say, okay, well, 1/3 then would be, think about this, if this 37 gram is 2/3, then what would be the 1/3 of a cup? That would be pretty much half of this, right? So if the 2/3 of a cup is 37, then 1/3 of a cup would be half of this. So that would be around 18 grams. So if you are looking for the whole cup, that would be 18 times 3, which is 54 grams. So basically, if you are looking to eat 1 cup of this, which is more than 1 serving, then you can adjust your total carbohydrates being 54. So you can make your calculations accordingly. So if you are eating a fixed amount of carbs per meal, let's say you're trying to stick to 60 grams of carbs, that 54 grams almost puts you to your target. And then you can look into how much protein you're getting. So if you have a protein goal, as we discussed, an average sedentary man eats around 50 to 60 grams of carbs. But if you are more into sports, you're more active, and you're working out, lifting weights, you may definitely need more than that, as much as twice or even more than that, if you're burning it out and if you're building muscle. On the other hand, you also have to look at your total fat. The next thing you need to look at is saturated fat. We want to keep the saturated fat less than 10% in our diet. So basically what you're looking here is 5% of that food is saturated fat. So that is not necessarily a bad thing, because it is less than 10%. So anything you eat should have less than 10% saturated fat. Trans fat is 0, which is great. That's something we try to avoid. We do not want to have trans fat in our diet. Processed foods, most processed foods have trans fats. Margarines, hydrogenated oils, especially those cookies, pastries, they all have a lot of trans fat. So that is your biggest enemy. So you need to totally avoid that. Saturated fats are okay up to 10%, as we said. You pay attention to big time to your total carbohydrates. Again, even when you buy rice or you buy bread, most things are in packages nowadays, and you just have to have a quick glimpse to see how much carbs they have per serving, and then you will figure it out. And then again, if you're buying same things again and again and eating again and again, which most people do and we all do, then you do not have to look at that, because you have something called memory, right? You will memorize this next time. Unless you are buying something totally different, then you will have to look at their nutrition facts. But if it is something that you already know, then that becomes easier and easier as you go along, as you pay attention to your nutrition labels.
Okay, the striking question finally, what should I really eat, right? So most people know what they're eating, but they don't know necessarily if it is good or not. So let's make a general statements here where you can pick what you want to eat from these choices. So in terms of carbohydrates, as you all know, lots of fruits and vegetables, legumes, food with high fiber content, right? Low fat dairy is okay as well. So carbohydrate wise, you can eat carbohydrates. How much carbs you should eat, that is based on your needs. Some people will need as low as 30 grams of carbs per meal, with some snacks in between, maybe 15 grams of snacks. Some people will need up to 60, 75 grams or more carbohydrates if they are very active individuals. So as we discussed about the caloric needs, so once you determine your caloric needs, around 40 to 50% of that can be carbohydrates. So as long as you're burning these carbohydrates and not letting the blood sugar go high, and you're maintaining your weight or even losing weight, then even if you're eating 60 to 75 grams of carbs per meal, is not going to really be a problem. Like personally, I eat around 75 grams of carbs per meal, but I work out a lot. As a result, I do not gain weight. If I was a patient with diabetes, I would have taken enough insulin to cover my carbohydrates. So I make sure that these sugars are going to my muscles, and then I burn that sugar later with the exercise and for my daily activities, of course. So as a result, as long as you maintain your weight, carbohydrate depends on your needs. Now, as we discussed in our article in our website, again in the sugarmds.com under diabetes education, which diet is best for diabetics, there I talk about in detail, but my favorite is the Mediterranean diet. I'm a Mediterranean, I'm from Turkey, but I mean that is one of the reasons that I prefer Mediterranean, but that's the only diet actually has been proven to reduce the mortality, which is dying from heart attacks and strokes. It has been proven to reduce the number of medications we give to patients. So as a result, Mediterranean diet is your best friend. Of course, you can do low-fat diet, low-carb diet, low-salt diet, whatever it may be, as long as we are keeping your calories low and you are eating the right foods, you are still okay. So when you're on a low-fat diet, for example, that doesn't mean that you can go eat all the other carbs out there. You still have to choose the right amount of carbs. When you are on a low carbohydrate diet, some people, for example, follow these ketogenic diets and so forth, but they end up eating so much saturated fat that their cholesterol go up, and that's not our goal, right? So we have to make sure we control A, B, and C. Your A1C, your cholesterol, and your blood pressure at the same time. So we are looking to have high potassium, which comes from your veggies and fruits, that reduces your blood pressure, right? And then you choose the right carbohydrates, which is low glycemic index carbohydrates with high fiber. That will help. And of course, when you are eating in a Mediterranean diet, for example, you eat carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. When you choose fat, you need to choose fat with very low saturated fat. So it is recommended to have less than 10% saturated fat in your diet. Again, saturated fats are commonly found in animal fat. So if you can avoid animal fat like steaks or red meat, if you're eating red meat, it has to be really lean. But if you're eating chicken, for example, taking the skin off, or trying to stick with the chicken breast or turkey will be really beneficial. That way you are getting the lean protein without the saturated fat in your diet. One thing that you have to totally avoid is trans fat. Trans fat recommendation in a person's diet for any individual is 0. So trans fat never helps you. That is the basic source of heart attacks and strokes. So hydrogenated oils commonly used in processed foods and commonly used in bakery. That's why we always tell patients avoid. Unfortunately, the biggest fall for our diabetic patients are bakery. Of course, everybody likes bakery. You just need to limit it to as low as possible. So if you like cookies, if you like to have cookies once a day, every day, instead of having 3-4 cookies, just have one. Take a walk after that. Limit it, and I think you'll still be winning. But if you can totally avoid it, that's gonna give you the best health ever. Now we talked about the carbohydrates, we talked about the fat content. You are looking for polyunsaturated fat, which are found in sunflower oil, canola oil, and olive oil, right? Nuts are extremely important. When you are having nuts, actually, that not only satisfies your hunger, but also gives a good amount of fat. So we do not necessarily tell patients avoid fat totally, but you can have healthy fats such as olive oil, nuts, canola oil are all fine. We do not recommend frying things just because it increases your overall calories. Remember, when you're on a diet, you always have to keep your total calories in mind, as we discussed in our previous in the beginning of the video. You have to always keep in mind how much calories you are getting. And when things are fried, their calorie count goes sky high. No matter how healthy the fat is, the overconsumption will still make you gain weight. And when you gain weight, you become insulin resistant, your cholesterol goes high anyways. So as a result, we have to keep our calories down, eat healthy fat, eat the right amount of carbohydrates and the right carbohydrates, And when it comes to the carbohydrates, as we discussed, it needs to be low glycemic index. Try to keep your glycemic index below 60 in most of the carbohydrates you eat. Try to eat fiber in your diet. Around 25 to 30 grams of fiber is recommended in a person's diet. That includes patients with diabetes. And when you count your carbohydrates, it is okay to take the fiber off. So if you're having 45 grams of carbs, but there's 10 grams of fiber in that, it is okay to count as 35. We call that net carbs. So I hope that video was helpful to you. And if it is, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for many more videos to come so you don't miss anything.